Aloha kako apau, and welcome to Voice of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future. I'm Kaua 5 for the Kiwani Foundation, and as you can see, we're sitting in a radio studio on the island of Kauai. KKCR is the name of the studio, and our guest, or perhaps we should say we're your guest, is iulani, our chief person in charge of Songs of Sovereignty. Iulani, mahalo nui for making time to be with us. We were glad to be able to skid in here this morning and actually catch you in action. And we're going to feature some of what you do during the course of your weekly show.
My purpose here in this studio on this show, the only sovereignty show in all the world, in a place where we as a people are working to rebuild our nation. And you're listening to KKCR Hanalei, KAQA Kilauea.
You want to tell us something about the show? I mean, people are going to see from some of the extracts that we set in what's going on here. But you've been doing this for, what, about a year now, huh?
A little over a year. I started in May of 2006, yeah. And let's take it back a little bit to Uncle Butch Kekahu, which is how we met.
Sure.
Uncle Butch was one of the people responsible for forming this radio station.
That's right. Yep.
And he formed the Aloha March 2000 and the Kiwani Foundation. And I was very, very fortunate to have been involved with him prior to his death. Fast forward to last year, they needed an on-air personality for Monday mornings, and I needed healing. My heart was really, really heavy. My son had suffered an accident, which he's recovering from now. And not only that, the burden of what I think that probably every person who loves this aina goes through on a daily basis, that kaumaha, that burden of grief of what can I do? What can I as one person do? We've tried so many ways, and we knock heads with people, and we drop out of sight, then we come back and try again. And I was carrying this really heavy burden for my country. And I've always carried this burden. And when they invited me to do the radio show here, I didn't really plan to create a sovereignty show. It just kind of was revealed to me by my ancestors. I do stay in touch with my ancestors on a daily basis. And Hawaiians, if you don't know you can do that, you can. You can. And
you may be in touch and not even know that what's being in touch with you.
Yes. And the more in tune I got with my ancestors, the more I saw an opportunity here to let's lay out all our cards on the table and let's actually say the word out loud on the air and see what happens. So one morning after 6 weeks of nice music and love songs and
kind of mellow, laid-back stuff.
Yeah, you know, I kind of blurted out on the air, well, this is not America, and we're broadcasting from the Hawaiian nation, and my name's Lenny, and the new title of this show is The Songs of Sovereignty. And of course, in the beginning, management was not that happy. However, I was able to convince them that this show would really round out what this radio station does. And I believe that it has done that for the station.
Well, I know that when talk about starting up KKCR was going on years ago, the whole point, the whole objective was to be open, inclusive, to share issues around the island, to make sure that everybody had a voice. So I mean, how could they, you know, really totally oppose? We don't have a voice. Why not?
Well, I think they saw the value of keeping me on air, or the value of not fighting me. Actually, though, I've received so much support from the radio station following their initial shock. They were like, why not? And everyone has really supported me here at KKCR, and I feel like we really do model what a community radio station does. And as for my show, I really can't claim credit for it because I'm driven by my ancestors to say the things I say, and I really put a lot of thought and prayer into the music that I pick, into what I say and do, and I try to be as factual as possible. I encourage people to really research their facts. Don't vala'au. Don't go on rumors. Find out for yourself. There's many, many places to find out the true and correct information. You cannot be voting for something because your cousin's going to do it or because your auntie said.
Although to some degree that's kind of the local way, right?
It is.
You know,
That's
you
why
kind of
we
go
have.
along, get along, go along, get along. You know.
That's why we have who we have in the de facto government right now. And so I really encourage people to, wake up, wake up. And in my way of thinking, we have two choices as a people. We can become a militarized zone, which we already are becoming, or we can be a free and sovereign nation. Those are the only two choices, people. And when I say that, it's quite shocking to people because they're like, well, come on, there's got to be. I have long maintained that the United States government's plan for these islands is like the James Bond movie where the Dr. Evil controls the world from the islands. And if we blow up, we're expendable. You know, it won't affect them over there.
Well,
And
just you don't have to go too far to remember Pearl Harbor.
right. And so I've long maintained that this is the choice. And I do support and pray for our soldiers over in Iraq. I feel really, really bad for them that they're caught in a war that is not going to have any conclusion. It's just not going to, no one's going to win. Everyone's losing with this war. And I pray for our soldiers, and I pray for our families that have soldiers that are fighting in a war that there is no conclusion, there is no win or lose. It's just going on and on. And I do pray that people will begin to feel more comfortable with the thought of being free and being sovereign.
Well, I think that you know, shows like yours, you're talking about this being a well-rounded community, having a mission for the community here, KKCR. It's similar to what we do with Voices of Truth, and that's to raise the awareness of people, to encourage them to seek out what their responsibility is in the community. Sounds to me like when you started about a year ago, your kuleana kind of came into focus, and it wasn't something that you were totally in charge of, but you had to make it happen. Yeah.
Everything added up,
Yeah, came
and
together.
here was the answer right here,
Yeah, came together.
given to me. And I know the music. I know what, you know, I know the history. Well, I won't say I know all of it, but I have enough knowledge to make it work. And
Well, you had the skills in place when the opportunity arose, and the outcome is what you're doing now.
I'm going to give you a quick update on what happened on the wall Tuesday. Wasn't there Monday. We were very, very underreported in the press, and for myself, I am boycotting all 3 newspapers. They're not getting my 50 cents on going online and reading, and I ain't going to contribute to the underreporting and the, it's just amazing. They said 60 people in the water, or a handful of people, a couple hundred of people, I think was the most count. By my estimation, there were at least 1,000 people on the jetty itself, and then the entire park at Nawiliwili was filled with cars and people. It was way more than 200, I'll tell you that much. In the water, we had at least 100 to 150 bodies going in and out. They had a really good system going on. When some came out, others jumped in, and then the canoe clubs timed it. Really, you know, they helped keep the super ferry off the shore, and then they went in, got fresh bodies, came back out with their canoes. And so there were not only surfers in the water, there were swimmers in the water, and I talked to several young ladies who were swimming. There were kayakers in the water, paddle boarders. There were boats, fishing boats in the water, small boats, all of them being hunted mercilessly by the Coast Guard and by DLNR. And I actually captured on film 2 Coast Guard boats trying to slam a surfer, a kid, between the, I guess it's called the gunwale of the boat, the side of the boats, but they were slamming their boats together and trying to crush people between their boats. Also, they were running people over, knocking them off their boards, chopping surfboards up, and it was incredible. I have never seen anything like this. This kind of violence on men, women, and children that were armed with nothing more than a surfboard or a paddle or just their swim fins. And I encourage people to find out what their kuleana is. What did your family do back in the day? Were you a drum beater? Were you a warrior? Were you a musician? Did you fish? Did you farm kalo? I talk about exercising inherent sovereignty on a daily basis. And here's an example that just recently at the Super Ferry rally on Tuesday night, I was with a young man. He had the Union Jack version of the Hawaiian flag,
Right.
the red, white, and blue. And then I had kapea iki, and we were facing a line of police officers, and the jetty was empty. And they were herding a couple people down and telling them they were going to get arrested. And so I was like in my best fighting mode. I even painted a moko on my face.
Oh, yeah.
And I had my flag. And I told the young man next to me, I said, we're going in. Just don't say anything, follow me. So we walked up to the police officers who, they're all my classmates. And they all know me. I know they listen to my show. And I know a lot of them are on our side, but you know, they're stuck. And they're like, come on, iulani, you know you can't. I said, I am not under the jurisdiction of the United States of America. Step aside. And I held my breath and they stood aside. And the young man and I marched right in with our flags. And I was just like, keep going, keep going. And then halfway down, I turned around and looked behind me, and there were 500 people behind me following me in. The violence escalated after the Super Ferry left, and they were hunting the kids down in the water, and these kids are exhausted, and just hunting them down, running them over, and throwing them around. They had guys in fatigues. I guess they were SWAT, I don't know. They didn't act like professional SWAT team would act. When you're hauling a 10-year-old and slamming him against a seawall, I don't think that's how a SWAT team is trained. And the cops were on the radio going,
What do we do?
what do we do? What do we do? And it just goes to show that they know that we are not under their jurisdiction.
Well,
We don't know.
Yeah. They've known that for years. They just haven't been, nobody's pushed the envelope. That's what's happened. You know, unfortunately, we've had a couple of generations of assimilation, and with all due respect to our parents and our grandparents, let's face it, they were pretty heavily oppressed. And this is kind of the generation of the awakening, right? And so that's why we're making some progress.
They were so oppressed that even in the songs that were written in those generations, for example, Pua Carnation, that's a sovereignty song because it has the word nation in it. You know, and there are many, many, many sovereignty songs that today I heard the Hawaiian war chant. Now, this is a hula that has been performed for our visitors, but it's been kept alive, and it's a war chant, people. Go figure out what those words are saying while those pretty girls with their uli uli are on the stage. They're declaring war on you. And our ancestors were very clever how they did it. They kept the songs alive, and they want them to be played. And you don't know how many kupuna call me up and say, oh, baby girl, thank you for playing these songs that nobody knows what they mean. You know, nobody understands the meaning behind the meaning behind the meaning.
The kauna.
But back to the point about the police officers stepping aside, it is really imperative for every indigenous person who has the koko to know that they do not have any jurisdiction over you. And you have to know that, and they will step aside. Just like they did, all the cops stepped aside with a young man and a woman with 2 flags who brought 500 people down the jetty because they know that they don't have jurisdiction over us. So it's very, very important for all of us to wake up and realize that we are sovereign. We
And
are.
it's time for change.
And it's time for
And
change.
we have to do it together. And there's a lot of different energies going on, and a lot of people working in different, from different points of view even, but we're all looking towards the same horizon and the same bright future for Hawaii, the Hawaiian nation. We were on Hawaii Island last week, and actually going back several months ago, one of my cousins over there who lives close to Kauai High was, and is also heavily opposed to the super ferry and the way that they've avoided, the environmental impact statement, any close scrutiny. And so she's a Hawaii Island person, and she sent me an email and she said, iulani, do you know iulani on Kauai? And I said, well, sure. She said, well, we're getting really tremendous information about what you have been doing in regards to not just the sovereignty issue, but particularly the super ferry. And so now I know that between the islands there's a lot of information being shared back and forth. We interviewed a young fellow, only been in Hawaii for 3 years, but his skills in managing information and so forth, so he's kind of like the webmaster for the Hawaii Island folks, exchanging information, making sure everyone's getting what's happening latest. And I told you what happened when we were down in Punaluu last Monday morning, and our host comes on in the morning. He just caught the news the night before and said, "Whoa, Kauai stood up, turned around a super ferry." And I'm thinking, how empowering. And then when I got back finally to Kauai last week, I got a call from someone who said, a lot of the people who were out on the water were young people. And he said, can you imagine the impact that incident, that demonstration, the violence of it all, how that must have just gelled them into a mindset that's going to be life-changing for them. So, and essentially he's saying the actions of the authorities down there have essentially solidified where these young people are going to go. And so they're right on board. They may have been on surfboards, but they're in the canoe, the right canoe, and we're all going in that direction.
Yeah, I would have been in the water with them too, and I struggled with it for a long time because as a leader I feel you need to be in the front lines. You need to be in the trenches with the people. And I thought about it and prayed about it, and I really realized that if something should happen to me, not that this is, well, it's important what I do.
Of course.
And I had to weigh it out. Should I get on a surfboard and get in the water, or should I stay on the pier with the flag? And in the end, I stayed on the pier because I'm not as young as I used to be. And there were plenty. They had a really good system going down.
The reality is there are different responsibilities and different levels. And if you are in a leadership position, you have to be able to coordinate and oversee everything. You can't get locked into a single activity.
Right.
You've got to be able to be involved and kind of step back and make sure that everything keeps moving ahead. So you made the right decision. I mean, there are obviously dedicated young people who got out there and did what they needed to do, and that's where they needed to be. So I know you probably wanted to be out there too, but you did your part. So, and we've heard about that.
I have never seen such violence towards young people. It has made an impression upon me for the rest of my life. I saw my classmates spraying mace in people's faces that I went to Kamehameha schools with. I saw boats smashing people between them, running them over like they were having a party out there, like they were playing a video game. And, I hope it doesn't come to more. They seem determined to come here. And a lot of Oahu people are saying, well, how come we don't want you here? How come we don't want them here? This is not the issue. This is really not the issue. It's, can we have you here and still have Kauai? Can we? Because everything is so unchecked here. I've given up going to the Planning Commission, really. It's a waste of my time. It's a dog and pony show. And I really, really applaud the efforts of all. Auntie Cheryl goes every week, Auntie Nani. These ladies go every week, and they spend their time, and they are talking to a brick wall that I am firmly convinced is never going to break down. And I'm also firmly convinced that we need to really get it together as far as unifying and
Well,
being sovereign, you know.
we need to establish limitations. We're living on islands. This is not a huge continent with.
We have finite resources.
Exactly. There are carrying capacities that have been long exceeded. Whether it's water, look at the social carrying capacity as far as I'm concerned. When the frustrations in the community are as great as they are, it's because there are too damn many people here, you know? So there's a time you got to stop. You cannot just develop uncontrollably, you know? It's got to stop. So
We've got 17 developments going down in Poipu right now. 17 in our already overdeveloped Poipu.
yeah.
Auntie Nunny was able, with the 1001 Friends, to get a moratorium for the east side temporarily because they wanted to put in another 700 or so units. Cocoa Palms is stalled. However, they're going to keep trying. Money doesn't have any feelings. They're going to keep coming. And I think what we saw on Tuesday was the island of Kauai, black, white, native, from wherever, young and old, saying, we are fed up. We can't take it anymore. Can you have a heart for us? You know, I went to the Planning Commission and I said, where do you want us to live? We can't afford $9 a gallon for milk. What do you want us to do? Do you want us just to die off and then you can reinvent our culture and sell your Disneyland version and go on your merry way? Is that the plan? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like they would like us all to just die off so they can continue doing Disneyland for the visitors until they use it all up, and then they'll go find some other untouched islands and do the same thing over again.
Well,
Because that is the American way. Let's throw it away. Let's throw it away. Let's buy it new and just throw it away. You know, I put it into perspective for my daughter who's married to a naval officer. I picked up a napkin and crumbled it up and I threw it on the ground and I said, someone just died in Iraq for that napkin. And she goes, what do you mean? And I go, how do you think napkins are made? You need fuel. In World War II, I remember my grandparents always telling me, save money. I remember them rinsing the poi bag out, you know.
Sure,
You
reuse
rinse
it.
that bag out, reuse the bag. You stuff that garbage bag full, you know. Nobody is saying to conserve from the government. No one is saying don't travel. No one is saying buy smaller cars. I mean, the Europeans must crack up. I lived in Switzerland for 8 years. Over there, they try to get these little three-wheel cars so they can get through the cities. And over here, they're selling us Hummers. Hummers are war vehicles. The Europeans must think we're really dumb. You know what I mean? Because they're not fuel efficient, and they're for war. And, you know, I lived in Europe for a very long time. I come home, we don't even recycle.
Yeah.
Very backwards thinking. It reminds me of ancient Rome, big time.
Well, people who don't get out and about and around the world, being patriotic Americans, feel that we're on the cutting edge and we're out in front of everything. And the truth is, we're way behind everyone else. The other ancient European civilizations have recycled. At this point in time, they're up on top technologically. I mean, talk about the cleanliness of Europe, the European cities, the way everything works. We don't have bridges falling down over in Europe. These things have either been standing for centuries or they're new. So if you're not getting out and around the world, you have a false impression of just where the United States stands as far as, well, look at Michael Moore. The movie Sicko, I understand, is going to finally come to Kauai, I heard.
I have it, actually.
Yeah, well, I saw it in New Orleans, and you start looking at the level of medical care throughout the world, whereas the United States, way down at the bottom.
Well, I gave birth in Switzerland, stayed in the hospital 7 days, and then was taken to a convalescing home to learn how to care for my baby. Here they kick you out in 1 day. And now my half-Swiss son...
You had some training on how to take care of a child?
Oh, yeah. They teach you how to take
Well,
care of
my
your
goodness.
child
I
there.
thought everybody just got kicked out after 3 days and you're on your
Not
own.
in, I was fortunate. I lived in Zurich and
Yeah.
I saw a model for Hawaii, not where we stash dirty cash, but I saw something that we could be besides a militarized zone, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And I guess finally, what I would like to leave people with is exercise your inherent sovereignty. Speak Hawaiian as much as you can, even if you only know one word in the sentence. Use it. Even
Yeah.
if only one word in the sentence is Hawaiian, use
And
it.
don't beat yourself up for not being fluent.
That's right. And speak pidgin. Be proud, okay? Speak your language. Sing your songs. Talk to your ancestors. Plant your native plants. Plant kalo in your yard. Plant tea leaf in your yard. Use tea leaf. Use the native medicines that we have. Hey, it cured my son's pneumonia and bed sore. Olena. When the doctors couldn't do anything for him, he was going to die. Olena cured him. Exercise your sovereignty every day in your attitude, how you behave, and finally with government authorities. Don't go looking for trouble, but if you do have trouble, exercise your sovereignty. Let them know you're not under their jurisdiction because you're not. You are not. You are indigenous and you are sovereign. And if everyone knows this, hey,
Well,
we go.
Hawaii with its national standing, international standing, um, you're talking about Switzerland. I've been spending about quite a bit of time over the past couple of years in Geneva, and we've made some real progress there with the United Nations. I mean, last summer we had two representatives from the Human Rights Committee. One was a Swiss representative, the other was from Ireland. Interesting, huh? And these two people essentially challenged a report from the United States that everything is fine with the United States and its indigenous people. And so that gave us an opportunity to challenge it. So now that's alive and still rolling, and the questions that these two, from the Swiss and the Irish representatives posed, still remain unanswered by the United States, but they won't be dropped. So we are making progress. You're doing your part here on Kauai, throughout the state, all through all the islands, on the airwaves, live streaming,
I'm glad to hear it.
and we're encouraging everybody to find their kuleana, do their thing, and all together we're going to get it done. Huh?
We will. We will. Onipa'a kako.
Mahalo nui
Mahalo.
for being here
Mahalo.
for us and doing the job, and we'd like to thank all of you who are watching. This is Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future. The iulani, big part of that future. Mahalo nui. We'll see you next time. A hui hou.